Hi, hello, this is Virtually Connecting, and you're joining us today from the altc conference. It's the second day after a very packed first day in Manchester. And we're joined by a keynote speaker, and well, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. I'm Teresa McKinnon at Warwick Language on Twitter, and we also have Kelly joining us, who will introduce herself very shortly. So first of all, let's go over to the room and find out who we have here from altc.
Okay, so I'm Amber Thomas. I gave the keynote this morning. Glad to be joining you.
I'm Clint Lalonde. I'm from BC campus in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and very happy to be here at altc.
I'm Lorna Campbell from the University of Edinburgh, and I'm also a trustee of alt.
I'm Keith Smythe from the University of Powys Islands. Pleased to be joining everyone today.
I'm Frances Bell. I'm an itinerant scholar. That means I'm retired from gainful employment. I'm very pleased to be here. Yeah. Oh, and also I've got a motorhome. That's itinerant.
And off camera, we've got Sheila and Richard here. We're just sort of helping out in the room and trying to make sure the microphone doesn't give too much feedback and stuff. But there's enough people here to talk, so I'll leave all the talking to them.
Thanks very much. Kelly, can we ask you to introduce yourself to the folks in the room too?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Kelly Terrell and I'm a senior technologist from the University of Southampton. I'm part of an enterprise team where we look after digital content repository platforms. And I particularly look after something called EdShare, which is to do with open educational resources.
There are just so many things that this group of people have in common that I can't imagine I need to give anybody much of a steer really in terms of what I'd like you to talk about. But we've already hit on a big one, which is around open, and that's been raised. But maybe we could start with Amber, just giving us some of the, if you like, some of the takeaways. Could you tell us a little bit about what you'd like people to really have taken away from the keynote that you delivered brilliantly this morning?
So I suppose one of them is this point about there's growing media interest in technology and teaching. It's always been there, hasn't it? But there's a new wave of interest in the use of technology in teaching and whether technology is about to transform education again. And I suppose I wanted to make a point about where that innovation might come from, and that it's not necessarily going to be some big new shiny product from outside of our sector. It might actually be lots of change from within the sector, supported by new types of products or new types of practices. So something about that I wanted to say. And I guess something about that in an institutional context, it does matter to think about money and scale and evidence cases and that kind of thing. Because if we don't learn how to do those things, then we won't get traction on anything. And as Teresa knows, getting traction on things is really, really hard. And unless we really engage with those issues about scale and sustainability, we won't get anywhere further. Or I suppose another way of putting it is that we might end up doing learning technology in a way that we don't feel comfortable with, just helping people shovel things onto VLEs. But how we actually shift that agenda is quite complex. And I thought Tressy's talk yesterday about the partnership between what's the academic disciplinary agenda and what's the technology was really key, and having that partnership. But it's hard to find the opportunities to do that, actually.
There are lots and lots of heads nodding in the room and over here as well, I have to say. So can we have some reaction from the folks in the room? How do you feel about the things that Amber's just said?
I mean, I certainly think this idea of where innovation comes from is really interesting, and I think it was quite timely as well, given that this 25th anniversary of the conference. One of the things Amber did was ask how many people had been involved in various government-funded tech initiatives over the years, and it was a really high proportion. I think 80% have been involved in just projects at some time. And I think you only have to look around people at this conference to see what an influence that had. And given that these central government-funded initiatives no longer exist, wonder not so much where the innovation is going to come from, but when the next sort of generation of learning technologies is going to come from. Because I think that, and this is a point that Alison Littlejohn made on Twitter, that in Scotland, there was an early wave of funding the Chefs Teach the Mans initiative, and so many of the people still working at quite senior levels within learning technology in the UK went through that programme at one stage. So you do wonder how, you know, the fact that that funding is no longer there, how is that going to have an impact going forward?
I was really struck with and appreciative of the fact that you pointed out all of the roles where government funding has helped to drive innovative practice. I see some of the similarities in British Columbia as well, where one of the big projects that we work on is the Open Textbook Project in British Columbia, which is a government-funded initiative. And I look at just the whole evolution of open educational resources as really coming from, it's an innovation that is now becoming embedded in more and more institutions, and it is driven because of government involvement. So to me, that's a success story and another great rationale for government to be involved. And I was really happy to hear you make that defense of public spending on those kinds of initiatives.
I think for me, one of the things that came out of the keynote this morning, thinking back to some of yesterday's sessions, is we still have a challenge around the tension between being critical about what we do and being reflective in terms of our practice and what might be possible, and a kind of conservatism around what's possible. I think Amber spoke this morning about a lot of what's possible is seen in early adoption of technologies, but when it goes wider and more mainstream, we tend to kind of then focus on the practical and the straightforward, and we lose something there. So one of the key challenges, I think, for me would be around how we sustain the what's possible and focus on the what's possible, and then try to resist getting a breadth of quite shallow practice versus a depth of practice in what we do. I'm not sure that tension is ever going to go away, but I think we have to find ways to address it.
I thought I might put in a sort of extra institutional perspective. I mean, obviously I worked for many years in higher education. I completely appreciate everything you've said here, but my practice, such as it is in learning, is in informal learning groups, social groups that I'm in, but also I'm an IT buddy in the local library. So, you know, let's put in a word for not university libraries just, but local libraries I have no actual appreciation of what was happening there until I volunteered as an IT buddy. So the sort of marginalized communities, the people seeking employment or sometimes not seeking employment, the older population. This is just so massive, because when you see what IT is doing to them as it's used as a tool to cut costs in local authorities and so on, it's just massive. And I realise it's a minority interest, but one of my hopes for ALT is that it increases its scope, just as it has done in further education and primary education, into community education and informal experiences. So that's my little plug.
I think that's a really, really important point.
It's worth me mentioning my husband has got a background in digital, but he works in housing now. And those issues around digital inclusion and social housing are things that he was actively working on. And it was fascinating that he was doing the same kinds of things that we were doing. So he was involved in thinking about the whole stack, from the connectivity through to the devices, through to and how do you make sure that people have got the skills to use the devices. And that work is all there still to be done. So there's definitely a thing about if we're a group of people that have got the skills to think all the way up the stack like that, maybe some of us need to get busy helping with that thing. Absolutely. And then other people are better suited to going and getting busy helping with, deep changes in practice. There is a lot of work for us all to do.
Well, I mean, I can give you the concrete example. When I started as an IT buddy, the first thing I came across terribly keen, I have never actually met the man who wanted the help. He made 3 appointments and he never turned up. So it wasn't me that put him off, because he never actually saw me. He was wanting to get help with an online bidding system for social housing. And people who aren't in the UK may not know this, but we have something called a bedroom tax. So say somebody had been, living with a sibling as an older person in a 2-bedroom social housing flat or something, they will be penalised in their benefits when one of those people dies. So they have to look for a 1-bedroom flat, which are in very short supply. And the only way, in my council, which I won't name, which is one of the most dodgy councils in the entire country, is it really discourages people from doing anything that isn't online because it's cheaper. And so in order to bid for this housing, you had to go onto a website and then you had to check your email every 3 days. So what about the people who don't have broadband at home, who don't have a computer at home, who are disabled, who have to come on the bus? And if they don't check if they're given an offer and they don't confirm it within 3 days, they lose the offer. So,
Yeah.
it's a social justice issue.
I think that we see something really important around where we look at digital and in thinking about those digital spaces and those digital rich spaces in a community where people can access and can get support, access services, take part in democratic processes. I think there's also something around where we can harness digital to amplify the voices of people who've been disenfranchised, and then raise some of these issues.
Yeah, and it's certainly an area where open education should be able to have a big impact, because it has to be open for everyone. And I think this is kind of like one of the reasons why I think making sure that all publicly funded education resources are open to the public, not just open within the higher education context is not open. Yes, it's got to be open for everyone or not at all. And it's by releasing access to those kind of resources that you start to reach out to people who are disenfranchised and hopefully start to sort of bridge that digital skills gap.
Yeah.
And actually there was a report from Australia, which I'm just putting this in for people who are still in the education community, that there's a set of people who will probably never get online, and what they may need is proxy access. So you may volunteer to be a proxy for somebody.
I was going to say there's an organisation called Everyone that I've been looking to find out a bit more about. UK based, and they're very much to do with this digital government, digital citizenship. And I was looking at a Venn diagram. Love Venn diagrams. And they'd mapped out. So there's the digital citizenship and engagement things, and things that people in government are thinking about, enfranchisement and civil technologies, if you like, civil digital. And then they've got health and digital aspects of that, and housing, and the one thing that wasn't there was education.
Yeah.
So I think going back to your point, Lorna, that there's something that we need to plug in there, and they're probably not even aware of the work the thinking that's gone into open education resources.
Yeah. But the funding for adult education, except 18 to 21-year-olds, was removed about 10 years ago in the UK. So that's not why they're not looking at it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think all those sectors are pretty tight, aren't they? There's no sector in the public sector that I would say is overfunded. But particularly FE and adult learning is cut massively.
But think if in IACE who were cut, they did a sort of report about 10 years ago and pointed out that the people who missed out on education the first time round, who left school at 15 and didn't have, or 14 in some cases, who didn't have access to standard education, are the ones who are missing out this time round. And it's really unjust.
I knew it wouldn't be long before we were having a deep, meaningful conversation. So thank you all very much for that. And I'm hearing very much and very strongly as well the importance from Keith of making sure that when we support digital education, we're not just supporting a shallow, small raft of practices. And we have the flexibility to support the depth and the range of practices, which kind of is connected as well with the marginalization of certain groups and their access to education, isn't it? Because actually, if we just reproduce the stuff that hits the largest tranche, then we're avoiding all of those on the edges. And I think Amber made a lovely point as well about how we learn well from the edges. And having been someone myself who has been involved in projects that have then been lost funding, what I found probably the most inspiring, at the time you think it's the most dreadful thing that can happen, but the most inspiring is that actually we've managed to replicate all that we were doing and more with free technologies. So, we can still do what we're doing with some of those tools, but obviously there are risks involved. It's this sort of connection between OER use and practice as well, open practice. And I did have a query from Twitter, actually, Amber. Somebody asked if they could see your slides. So I'll pass them on, I'll tweet them to you. So there are people out there who are very interested in the conversations that we're having. Kelly, you're responsible for an open source repository tool, which for me is kind of more about the practice, or as much about the practice as it is about the resources. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what you feel the mission is there in terms of what you're doing with EdShare.
Okay, I mean, so the enterprise team that I'm part of, our mission has always been in the wider area of open access, open research data and open education, is that our mission is that we're here to support the wider community as they engage with open access. So therefore, what's going on in the field is very much what drives us, what people are looking for, what they're looking to do. We're a not-for-profit setup, we're within a university, but at the same time, we also have experts within our faculty and within our networks who then also help drive those people that are not the early adopters. They're looking for guidance, they're looking for direction, they're looking for, how do I need to do this? Give me a blueprint of how somebody else has succeeded in this area. And I see, Amber, the slide that you shared with the graph, the chart showing the early adopters and then the gap towards the mainstream is exactly what I see with EdShare. We've had the early phase of that, which was a JISC-funded project originally for a Southampton instance. That's where it came from. And that was very much early adopters, and that was this is where we'd like to be, this is where we're going. Once that project finished, it then trying to move that across to people that were going to be using it in a day-to-day, their needs, how they would want to interact with it was very different to what those early adopters had intended it to be. However, time moved on and those people from the research project moved on, and that's where our role came in. We came back in to sort of take it on, adopt it, and say, right, we need to revisit this. What is it that people need to support them in their day-to-day practice? How do we need to be pushing forward in terms of that open education agenda? Because some people will be interacting with it. They just want to do their day-to-day. But I've always got in my mindset, there's the day-to-day and where we also need to take people on a journey and how can we help in that respect.
So that's the kind of values-led proposition that I, in my naivety, having come from secondary education into higher education, would expect to sit in universities. That universities have a mission to inform, to educate, to support, and to help. And I see that in Canada, Clint. Can you tell us a bit about how it works in Canada and some of the things that have been happening with BC campus?
Yeah, so well, in Canada, it's a little bit different than some other countries in the fact that higher education and education in general is the domain of the provinces. So it's a little bit more regional in our approach. And there certainly is collaboration amongst organizations across provinces. But I think because of that regional ability, it makes us a little bit more nimble, a little bit more able to do sort of innovative and special projects. We feel, an organization like ours, which is like a consortium of the 26 public post-secondary institutions in British Columbia, we have contacts in all of the institutions and are able to pull people together to do projects and have been around for a long time. So that does give us some flexibility and some ability to do small scale innovative projects that then we can share with other provinces. We have great connections with, Ontario, eCampus Ontario is doing some great stuff around open education and open educational resources there. And there's similar organizations to ours. We're kind of the connectors that can help pull together some of those projects.
I think there's an important point about scale there and the network effect, and it's that Nielsen thing, isn't it? Of 90% of people will watch, view, consume. 9% may comment, like, bookmark. 1% may contribute, And I think that's really one of the reasons why it's hard to get network effect at a single institution level. I think even within a discipline, it's hard to get that network effect, because if you've got a department of, say, 200 academics, and if that works itself out, you've only got a handful of contributors there to the commons. So there's definitely something about that network effect, whether it's at 26 institutions or whether it's at the disciplinary level or national.
That's a great point.
I was going to say, I picked up on a little bit of a theme between your talk and Tressy's talk yesterday about the role of learning technologists really becoming more, well, I don't know if more is the right word, but sensitive to the disciplinary needs of the very specific teaching challenges of each discipline. And I'm curious as to how it works in the UK. Are learning technologists usually centralized in it, or are they?
It depends a lot. Very much it depends. In the conversations I've been involved with, the heads of e-learning forum, for example, we haven't even got a standard way of describing the difference between different sorts of embedded faculty learning technologists and central. And sometimes you have a central team that they're allocated to a particular faculty. Sometimes you've got a team of 10 people in one faculty. And so you can't really make any assumptions about where the gravity is in the organisation about that expertise, about whether it's in the centre or in departments.
Yeah, and also what Tracy said yesterday is it's the power of the subject department.
Yes.
So what actually my business school did the opposite, but what a powerful business school might, or medical school might choose to do is have their own experts in their department when the rest of the university is having the centralised version.
Certainly at the University of Edinburgh we have quite a large central information services directorate, and within that there's embedded a whole host of learning technologists with colleague Melissa Hampton as the Director of Learning, Teaching and Web Services Directorate, where there are a lot of learning technologists. But the actual colleges and schools have their own teams of learning technologists as well. So we've got both a centralised and a distributed model as well. Again, kind of navigating that is not necessarily straightforward, but different schools and colleges have very, very different needs, obviously.
I think as part of cost cutting, certainly in my institution that I worked in, I worked there for over 20 years, and the amount of learning technology support focused in departments was much more at the beginning, and it was totally gone by the end. And particularly in one area of work, there was something that we could do in a large undergraduate module, because we had local support. The next year we couldn't do it all because it didn't fit the one size fits all.
I think we've got a challenge there in the way in which we sometimes separate out the work of learning technologists from academic practice. So one of the things that I think we do much better than universities, and certainly for new academics who come up with things like PG cert programs and MX, to be using those programs to immerse in the types of practices we want them to take forward. But actually most PG cert programs are quite orthodox in what they teach and how to teach it. And you have modules about things like collaborative learning, where you read about collaborative learning, you might have a discussion board about collaborative learning, and you write an individual essay about collaborative learning. And actually this is slow burn stuff. When you think about over the course of 4 or 5 years in most institutions, you might have a couple hundred people coming through PG cert. They're your next generation of academics, academic leaders. So we've got to more closely connect digital and individual education practice within the development of academic practice.
And can I just say as well, I mean, that's something that's frustrated me for many years, but perhaps even more importantly for school teachers as well. We need to get technology and openness and all these concepts embedded in the training courses for school teachers.
The reason fully aware of this, Kelly, you might not know me, I'm off camera here. My background is primary school teaching. I came into HE and now into system development from being a teacher. And the 2 institutions I've worked in, I pull my hair out because they are not doing the teaching the teachers how to do proper pedagogy using digital tools. It's just not there, and part of it is because the lecturers themselves were maybe brought up without it, and they've not done they've gone through that sort of PG cert HE transfer, but it hasn't included the the digital tools around it. And I'm there saying, yes, there are things in HE we can learn from primary and from secondary school, but there's also, we need to be teaching those people who are teaching our next generation of students coming into the university how to be doing things with the VLE, with other tools around the VLE, with just digital learning.
I think
full stop.
I think there's a basic level of digital and information literacy that is sometimes not getting fed back and communicated to our teachers, and I think that's really important, and we certainly see it a lot in terms of social media, and so many school districts will just lock down social media, and children learn nothing from that, absolutely nothing. And I think schools have a responsibility to teach children the information and digital literacy skills to be able to navigate these online spaces, but the teachers haven't got these skills themselves, so it's a big gap, it's a big skills gap.
And the discussion now on what's actually happened in France about banning mobile phones in schools.
Oh dear, oh dear.
In schools, we should be talking about how to use them properly.
Yeah.
I wondered when the French question would arise again. As a Francophile, I feel obliged to say, okay, it was just a government decision. It's not going to change a great deal.
For alt, I have had the honour of working with two former colleagues, both wonderful women, Christina Costa and Christina Ramsey, who did exactly what you described. Christina, very innovatively for the time in research, with research and postgraduate students, and Chrissy with staff, academics, who did exactly that and went on to win Learning Technologist of the Year. So good for alt, recognising that good practice.
It also feels like within an institution, there's this sort of gradual shift in the norms amongst the academics, and then as the early career academics who are I'm going to come back and say something about age in a minute, because I don't mean this about age, but what I mean is you get a wave of people who are feeling more confident and resident in the technologies, who then become kind of the director of studies or something in my institution. You'd have these particular roles, the lead for student experience, and they just take digital technology as just normal. And they just gradually, without necessarily a battle of power, they just gradually get more visibility, and that becomes more normal. And I can see this happening in departments across our institutions, and there's something about senior management, even if they feel uncomfortable and like visitors in this stuff, that they recognise that they need to showcase the people that look like they're comfortable there. And at Warwick University, we've got an internal academy that Teresa and I have both been involved with, that does an important job of that. I think it does an important job of signposting those academics that we think are doing a great job in their teaching and their leadership and management and development of teaching. And for many of them, digital technology is just a normal thing in part of that. So even if there's an individual that comes into a department that's quite traditional and finds these things quite uncomfortable, there are other role models in the institution that show that there is a way of being a digitally confident teaching academic, and it's okay, and actually you'll get a thumbs up for it, even if you're surrounded by people that don't touch this stuff.
That's a great point, and it's, I think Warwick had quite an innovative approach there and it was a multidisciplinary approach, bringing people together from different silos and getting us talking about what we do. I think it was the WHIA work was very important and will continue to be important. But change takes time, as you're all saying, really, and often it feels like you're swimming, upstream with a barrage of stuff floating down towards you that you have to battle through as well. So it's good to see, just watching the dynamics in the room, that we have a sense of humor and we also have a sense of community going on, because I think we all need each other. I think it's, these are really sticky, complex problems that we have to deal with, and connecting to each other and having these conversations will help, if nothing else, keep our sanity. I'm going to sort of start to round up, because I know you guys on site are going to need to get on to other things, but perhaps before you leave, you could tell us something else that you're expecting to get from the altc conference, because you've got a day and a half left. What are you most looking forward to? What other things are you hoping to get from the altc conference before it all winds up sometime tomorrow?
So I'm quite enjoying watching this new era of people enter the profession. I'm lucky enough to work with some of them myself, and there's a pragmatism, I think, to some of the people that are entering into learning technologies at the moment. And big wave for Kerry Pinney, who works in my team, who's a really great example of that. She's got her head screwed on. And I'm interested in seeing who those new people are who are joining our community, who bring a whole new set of perspectives, really. So I want to spot who they are.
I know that one thing I'll be getting from the conference is sore hands. One of the things I have to do this afternoon is live tweet the Gasta session, which is going to involve, I've never seen one of these in action before, but the description says it's a quick fire session, and that there will be speaker participation from Clint and from Donna Langlois and from Debbie Bath, and how I'm going to, and audience participation. So I have no idea how I'm going to keep up with you all.
You need a team.
I think I will.
Well, we haven't taken so much from what I heard yesterday and this morning already, but I think for me, I'm looking forward to a number of sessions which seem to be looking critically at ideas around open. One of the challenges I think we've got, not in a forum like the Alt conference, but in the sectors, I think we're still in a place where our colleagues are conflating open with open online. And then going back to some what Francis said earlier about community education, I think we need to look at how we intersect open online, open on campus, and open in the community, and the role that digital can play there. There's a few sessions that seem to be addressing this, so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, slightly subverting your question, but Teresa, but I was massively encouraged by reaction that we got from within and beyond the conference at a session I did with Catherine Cronin yesterday, of people's generosity in contributing. And I know that we probably had more viewers outside the room in our session than we had inside the room. And as we are also talking to people through the live stream now, I just want to say thank you very much. And I'm not just bidding for contributions to our session, but you people who are beyond the conference, please keep contributing. Your contributions are most appreciated.
Mine's pretty pragmatic. I came over here to find out more about alts and the CMALT program, hoping to take some of these ideas back to a community of practice that I'm involved with back in British Columbia called ETUG, the Educational Technology User Group, which is very similar. I get the sense from a distance that it's very similar to alt and the community around alt. So I'm really here to kind of soak it all up and bring back some ideas for. It's our 25th anniversary for our organization next year as well. So there are some synergies between the two organizations. So I'm continuing to build some bridges between the two organizations and see what that can forge in the future.
That's brilliant. And it's excellent to have the opportunity to use the technologies to continue the conversation, isn't it? Beyond those borders, to take those doors down, open out the silos and have these conversations more openly. And thank you all very much for your time. I'm reminded of something that Tressie said yesterday, which was very much about it's up to us to make the change. And obviously we're looking here at a room full of people, both virtual and on site, who are busy doing just that. Thinking about connecting to their values, what they value, and getting on and making the change, working within our own circles of influence, even if they are limited. So thank you all very much for your time, and thank you for your very open conversations and for everything you've contributed to this virtually connecting session as part of altc. So a big cheery wave as you go on your way, and I hope you have a great day. I shall be in that Gusto session as well. I have no idea how I'm going to experience it virtually, but there we go. I'm sure we'll enjoy that. So thank you all very much, and thank you to those of you watching as well virtually. As Francis said, the conference is enriched by your presence.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.